when my son Kevin put the documents for a $500,000 mortgage in front of me and coldly said, "Dad, you've saved enough. It's time to help us." I felt like I was raising a stranger. My refusal infuriated his wife Jessica, and they sued me. They thought I was a helpless old man, but they had no idea that I was not someone who could be fooled. You won't believe what happened next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The coffee cup froze halfway to my lips when Kevin slid the mortgage documents across my dining room table. 500,000. The number stared up at me like a slap in the face. "Dad, you've saved enough," Kevin said, his voice cold and matter-of-fact. "It's time to help us." Jessica didn't even look up from her phone, scrolling through photos of quartz countertops and spa-like bathrooms. "Look at this master suite, babe. 3 walk-in closets." She finally glanced at me, her smile as sharp as a shard of glass. "Isn't it perfect for starting our family?" I set my coffee down with deliberate calm. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "Co-sign," Kevin said, tapping the papers with his index finger. "Your credit score. Our dream house. Win-win." The audacity hit me like a physical blow. I'd raised this boy, taught him the value of a dollar earned through honest work. Now he sat in my dining room, the same room where I'd fed him countless meals on an electrician's salary, demanding I risk everything I'd saved. "You're 65, Dad? What do you need all that money for anyway?" Kevin's eyes darted away from mine, focusing on the stack of papers instead. Jessica leaned forward, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Family helps family, Frank. That's what grandparents do. They invest in their children's future." "Grandparents?" I repeated slowly. "Well, eventually." She waved her hand dismissively. "Once we get settled in our new house, of course." I flipped through the mortgage application, seeing their combined income clearly listed. Kevin made decent money as a marketing manager. Jessica worked as a part-time social media influencer, spending more than she earned on clothes and spa treatments. Together they pulled in enough to afford a nice home. Just not this nice. "You make $85,000 a year between you," I said, pointing to the income section. "This mortgage payment would be $4,800 monthly. What bank approved this?" Kevin's Adam's apple bobbed. "Dad, don't get caught up in the details." "Details matter." I slid the papers back across the table. "The answer is no." Silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Jessica's phone clattered onto the table. "Excuse me?" Her voice pitched higher, all pretense of sweetness gone. "No, I won't co-sign for a house you can't afford." Kevin's face reddened. "Are you serious right now? After everything we've done?" "What have you done?" Oh, the question came out sharper than I'd intended, but I was past caring about hurt feelings. Jessica stood up so fast her chair scraped against the hardwood floor. "We visit you. We include you in our lives. We actually care about having a relationship with you, unlike some people's kids. Visiting isn't currency, Jessica." "Oh, so now we know where we stand." Tears appeared in her eyes, the kind that came on command. "I should have known you'd choose money over your own son's happiness." Kevin finally met my eyes, and what I saw there made my chest tighten. Resentment. Entitlement. The boy who used to help me fix neighbors' faulty wiring for free was gone, replaced by this stranger who saw me as nothing more than a bank account with legs. "Dad, you owe us this," he said quietly. Those 5 words hit harder than a punch. "I owe you? All the sacrifices we've made?" "What sacrifices?" Jessica grabbed her purse, her movements sharp and angry. "Come on, Kevin. We're wasting our time here." Kevin hesitated, looking between his wife and me. For a moment I hoped some fragment of the son I'd raised might surface. Instead, he gathered the mortgage papers with shaking hands. "You'll regret this, Dad." Jessica paused at the door, turning back with venom in her eyes. "Don't expect us to keep pretending we want you around when you obviously don't give a damn about our future." The door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. I sat alone in my dining room, staring at the spot where the papers had been. My coffee had gone cold, forming a thin skin on top. The house felt different somehow, smaller, emptier. I lost my son today. Not to death or distance, but to greed and entitlement. Standing slowly, I walked to my study and pulled out a small notebook from the desk drawer. My phone was already ringing when I opened the notebook. Kevin's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring through to voicemail, then watched as it immediately started again. On the fourth call, I answered. "What, Kevin?" "What?" His voice cracked with disbelief. "That's all you have to say. Do you have any idea what you just did?" I could hear Jessica in the background, her voice a harsh whisper. "Tell him about the inspection deadline. Tell him we'll lose the house." "Dad, we have 48 hours to secure financing or we lose our deposit. 25,000 down the drain because you're being selfish." "I'm being realistic." "Realistic?" Kevin's laugh was bitter. "You've got 6 figures sitting in retirement accounts you'll never spend. We're talking about our future here." The phone rustled, and Jessica's voice came through sharp and clear. "Frank, I'm sorry Kevin's being so emotional. This is just really hard for us." Her tone had shifted to wounded and fragile. "We've dreamed about this house for months. We've planned our whole future around it. Then you should have planned better. I don't understand why you hate me so much." The fake tears were back in her voice. "I love your son. I want to give him the life he deserves." "On my dime." "It's not like that. This is an investment in our family's future, your grandchildren's future." I wrote down the time and date, then started transcribing their words as they spoke. Grandchildren that don't exist yet. Kevin took the phone back. "Dad, listen to me. We'll pay you back with interest." "With what money? You can barely afford your current rent." "Our salaries will increase." "Will they? Is that guaranteed?" Silence stretched for several seconds. Then Jessica grabbed the phone again. "You know what, Frank? I'm done being nice. Kevin's too good to say this, but I'm not. You're a selfish old man who's going to die alone with all that money you're hoarding. Don't expect us to come running when you need us." The line went dead. I wrote down her exact words, then checked my voicemail. 3 messages, each more desperate than the last. I transcribed those too, noting the timestamps. My phone buzzed with a text from Kevin. "Dad, please reconsider. This house means everything to us." 2 minutes later, another. "We'll do anything. Please." Then Jessica, from her own phone. "Frank, I said things I didn't mean. I was just upset. Can we start over? Kevin's crying. You're breaking your son's heart." "Fine. Be that way. But don't come crying to us when you realize what you've lost." I screenshot each message, creating a digital folder on my computer labeled Evidence. My phone rang again, this time my sister Susan. "Frank, what's going on?" "Kevin just called me sobbing, saying you refused to help them buy a house." "That's right." "Well, why?" "They're young. They need help getting started." "Susan, did he tell you it's a 500,000 house?" Pause. "He said it was their dream home." "Did he mention that I'd be co-signing a mortgage that's more than their annual income?" Longer pause. "Well, no, but..." "Did he explain that they've been living paycheck to paycheck despite making decent money?" "Frank, you don't have to be so harsh." I hung up and added her call to my log. Within an hour, my brother Robert called. Then my neighbor Mrs. Davis. Then Kevin's old high school friend Chris. All with the same story. Kevin and Jessica were devastated, couldn't understand why Dad was being so cruel. Each call got added to the log. My phone buzzed constantly through dinner. Text after text, alternating between Kevin's guilt trips and Jessica's manipulation. Dad, we looked at cheaper houses, but they're all in bad neighborhoods. Frank, Kevin hasn't eaten all day. He's making himself sick over this. You're choosing money over your own son. How does that feel? We'll never ask for anything else. This is it. One favor. I'm pregnant. That last message made me pause. I called Kevin immediately. Jessica says she's pregnant. She might be. We haven't been to the doctor yet. Kevin, is she pregnant or not? It's complicated, Dad. No, it's simple. Yes or no. Click. He hung up. 30 seconds later, a text from Jessica. False alarm about the pregnancy. Stress makes me late sometimes. I added that to the file too, highlighting it in red. By 10 p.m., I'd received 47 text messages and 12 voicemails, each one more desperate, more accusatory, or more manipulative than the last. They'd called everyone on my contact list, painting me as a miserly old man who cared more about money than family, but they'd also revealed their true selves in ways they didn't realize. The entitlement, the manipulation, the lies. It was all documented now. I turned off my phone, looked at my notebook, filled with their own words, and closed it. Tomorrow would bring more of the same, but tonight I needed sleep. Sleep didn't come. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, remembering the boy Kevin used to be. The quiet house gave me space to think, to trace the path from that eager kid to the stranger who demanded my life savings. Kevin at 10, standing on a milk crate in my workshop, tongue poking out in concentration as he learned to use a wire stripper. Dad, show me again how to tell if it's the right gauge. His small hands, serious and careful, mimicking my movements exactly. Kevin at 18, graduation day, valedictorian of his high school class, full scholarship to the State University for Business. I'd sat in that auditorium bursting with pride as he gave a speech about hard work and perseverance. My father taught me that anything worth having is worth working for, he'd said, looking right at me. Kevin at 22, his first job interview, he'd called me afterward, voice shaking with excitement. Dad, they offered me $60,000 to start. Can you believe it? I'm actually going to make more than you ever did. No malice in those words, just joy and amazement. Back then, he'd understood the value of a dollar earned. The change started slowly after he met Jessica at a work conference in Las Vegas. She was everything Kevin wasn't. Confident, flashy, demanding. Within months, he was driving a leased Audi he couldn't afford, wearing expensive clothes, dining at restaurants that cost more than I'd spend on groceries in a month. Dad, you've got to live a little, he'd said when I'd expressed concern about his spending. Life's too short to pinch pennies forever. But it wasn't living, it was performing. Jessica had expensive tastes and expected Kevin to keep up. When his salary couldn't stretch to cover her expectations, the request started. Dad, I need help with rent this month. Just $500. My car repair wiped out my budget. That was the first one. I'd given it gladly, remembering my own tight months as a young man. Then it was car payments. The Audi's lease payment you went up, Dad. Can you spot me $800 until I get my Christmas bonus? Then credit cards. Jessica's having some medical issues. The insurance doesn't cover everything. Just $2,000 to get us through. Each time, I'd helped. Each time, Kevin promised it was temporary. Each time, Jessica had a story. Unexpected expenses. Kevin's job not paying enough. Temporary setbacks that somehow became permanent patterns. I'd tried giving advice instead of money. Son, Maybe you should look at a cheaper apartment. Kevin's response had been immediate irritation. Dad, I don't need lectures. I need help. Have you considered budgeting classes? I'd suggested once. Jessica had laughed, actually laughed, and said, Frank, we're not living in the 1950s. People our age don't sit around counting pennies. But the pennies mattered. I'd learned that lesson the hard way, working 60-hour weeks for 30 years, fixing other people's electrical systems, saving every dollar I could. I'd wanted Kevin to understand that money represented time, my labor, my life. Instead, he saw it as something that appeared magically, something he was entitled to, because we shared blood. The wedding had been the breaking point I should have recognized. Jessica wanted everything perfect. Designer dress, expensive venue, open bar for 200 guests. Kevin had asked me to pay for the photographer, then the flowers, then the honeymoon when their credit cards maxed out. Dad, it's a once-in-a-lifetime event, he'd pleaded. We can't skimp on our wedding. I'd paid. $20,000 for one day of celebrating two kids who hadn't saved a dime for their own future. I'd watched Jessica direct the photographer like a movie star, demanding shot after shot until the man looked ready to collapse from exhaustion. 2 weeks later, they'd called from Cancun in a panic. Their hotel bill was higher than expected. Their rental car had been damaged. They needed money for the flight home. Another $3,000. This is the last time, Dad. I promise. But of course it wasn't. The requests kept coming, each with a new crisis, a new justification, a new promise that this would be the end of it. I'd enabled their irresponsibility, thinking I was helping my son, when really I was creating a monster. Kevin had learned that Dad would always come through, always open his wallet, always choose family over financial sense. Now they wanted $500,000. Not as a loan, they'd never actually repaid anything they'd borrowed. As a gift wrapped in the pretty paper of family obligation. The boy who'd learned to use tools in my workshop had become a man who saw me as nothing more than a tool himself, a means to an end, a way to get what he wanted without earning it. I got up from bed with new resolve, walking back to my study. The notebook lay open on the desk, filled with today's documentation of their harassment campaign. I picked up my pen and started a new section. Pattern of behavior, historical context. If they wanted to play hardball, they'd learn that this old electrician knew how to fight back. Dawn was breaking through my study windows when I opened the notebook with fresh determination. 40 years of fixing problems had taught me that the best way to stop a short circuit was to trace it to its source and shut off the power. Time to turn off Kevin and Jessica's access to my money permanently. First, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. I called First National Bank, where Kevin had mentioned applying for the mortgage. Hi, this is Frank Miller. My son Kevin applied for a home loan with you folks. As his potential co-signer, I'd like to understand the terms. The loan officer, Brenda Mills, was helpful and thorough. Mr. Miller, I have to tell you, your son and daughter-in-law seem like lovely people, but this loan is aggressive given their debt-to-income ratio. What kind of debt are we talking about? Papers rustled on her end, credit cards mostly. About $55,000 in revolving debt between them. Car loans, student loans. Their monthly obligations are already at 38 of gross income before adding this mortgage. $55,000 in credit card debt. They'd claim to be financially responsible, just needing help with this one purchase. I wrote down every detail Brenda shared. Next, I pulled up Kevin's social media. Amazing what people revealed when they thought only friends were watching. Last month, photos from a weekend in Las Vegas. 3 weeks ago, Jessica's girls' trip to Miami, complete with first-class flight photos and 5-star hotel room shots. 2 weeks ago, Kevin's new gaming setup, easily $3,000 in equipment. But according to them, they couldn't afford groceries without help. I screenshot everything, creating a timeline of expensive purchases versus their claims of poverty. The evidence was damning. Two people living far beyond their means, using credit cards to maintain a lifestyle they couldn't afford, then expecting me to bankroll their next financial fantasy. At 10 a.m., I called Carter Associates, the law firm that had handled my estate planning. Helen Carter had helped me set up my will and retirement accounts. She knew exactly what I had to protect. "Frank, good to hear from you. What can I do for you?" I explained the situation carefully, leaving out the emotional details and focusing on facts. Helen listened without interruption, occasionally asking clarifying questions about Kevin's demands and threats. "Let me make sure I understand," she said when I finished. "Your son and his wife want you to co-sign a mortgage that would obligate you for $500,000, despite their existing debt and inability to afford the payments alone." "That's correct." "And when you refuse, they begin a campaign of harassment and manipulation, claiming you owe them this assistance." "No, right again." "Frank, you need to document everything. Every call, every text, every conversation. If this escalates legally, you'll need proof of their behavior." "Already started." I flipped through my notebook. I've got yesterday's conversations transcribed, screenshots of text messages, a record of everyone they called to pressure me. "Excellent. Now here's what you need to know about your legal position." Helen explained that oral promises meant nothing without proof, that children had no legal claim to their parents' money, and that co-signing a loan made me fully responsible for the debt if Kevin defaulted. The most important thing is to get them to admit their true motivations on record. If they're claiming this is about family obligation rather than business, let them say so. If they're threatening to cut off contact unless you pay, document that too. How do I get them on record? Colorado is a one-party consent state for recording. As long as you're part of the conversation, you can record without telling them. I set up a recording app on my phone before my next conversation with Kevin. He called at noon, right on schedule. "Dad, I've been thinking about yesterday. I was upset, said things wrong." I hit record. "What things?" "Well, when I said you owed us, that came out wrong. I meant that family helps family, you know. So you don't think I owe you anything?" Well, Dad, you've got all this money just sitting there. We're your only family. Who else is it going to go to?" "Maybe charity." Sharp intake of breath. "Charity? You'd give our inheritance to strangers." "Your inheritance?" I kept my voice calm. "Kevin, I'm very much alive." "That's not what I meant." Jessica's voice in the background. "Tell him about the house. We need an answer today." "Dad, we need to know by 5 p.m. The sellers won't wait." "Then you should find financing you can actually afford." "We can afford it. We just need you to co-sign, because my credit score took a hit when Jessica was out of work last year." "When was she out of work?" Pause. "It was a few months. Look, that's not the point." "What's the point, Kevin?" "The point is that parents help their children. That's what families do. By risking their financial security. You won't be risking anything. We'll make every payment." "With what money?" "Brenda Mills says you're already carrying $55,000 in credit card debt." Dead silence. Then Jessica's voice, clearer now. "He called the bank. I told you he would." "Dad, you're investigating us? Your own son?" "I'm protecting myself from a bad financial decision." "This is unbelievable. I'm your son." "Yes, you are. And I raised you better than this." The call ended with Kevin hanging up on me. I stopped the recording and saved it to my evidence file, labeling it, "Kevin admits expectation of inheritance, confirms credit issues." My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "We know what you're doing, Frank. You won't get away with this." I screenshot that too, then typed back, "Get away with what? Protecting my retirement savings?" Her response came immediately. "Stealing our future. Kevin deserves that money more than some random charity." Screenshot. Another piece of evidence showing their true motivation. By evening, I had 18 recorded conversations, 43 text messages, and a comprehensive financial profile of Kevin and Jessica's situation. They weren't just financially irresponsible. They were delusional about money, believing they deserved anything they wanted simply because they wanted it. I sat in my study, reviewing the growing file of evidence, feeling something I hadn't felt since yesterday morning. Control. They thought I was a confused old man who could be bullied into submission. My phone buzzed with another demanding text from Jessica, but this time I smiled as I screenshot it. Another piece of evidence for the growing pile. The real battle was just beginning. My phone rang at 7 a.m. sharp. Margaret's name on the screen made my stomach tighten. My sister never called this early unless something was wrong. "Frank, I hope I'm not waking you." Her voice carried that careful tone she used when discussing family problems. I heard it during Dad's final illness, during Mom's funeral arrangements, during my divorce 20 years ago. "I'm up. What's going on, Maggie?" "Well, I got a call from Kevin last night. He was very upset." I sat down hard in my kitchen chair. "I'll bet he was. He says you refuse to help them buy a house, that you have all this money sitting around and won't lift a finger for your own son." She paused. "Frank, that doesn't sound like you." "Did he mention it was a $500,000 house, or that he wanted me to co-sign for a mortgage they can't afford?" Silence stretched between us. When Margaret spoke again, her voice was smaller. "He said it was their dream home, that you could easily afford to help but chose not to. Margaret, they make good money. They've just spent every penny on expensive toys and trips. Now they want me to risk my retirement so they can keep living beyond their means." "But Frank, he's your son." "Yes, he is. And I raised him to be responsible. Apparently, that didn't stick." After we hung up, I knew it was just the beginning. By noon, I'd gotten calls from my brother Mike, my cousin Janet, and 3 family friends, all with the same story. Kevin and Jessica were devastated, couldn't understand why I was being so heartless, but it was social media where they really went to work. I didn't have Facebook, but my neighbor Mrs. Davis showed me Jessica's post when I ran into her at the mailbox. Her screen displayed a long, emotional essay about family betrayal and elderly selfishness. Jessica had written about their struggling young family being abandoned by Kevin's wealthy father who refuses to share his blessings. The comments were brutal, people I'd known for decades calling me greedy and heartless. Some parents forget what family means. Money can't buy you love, but apparently it can buy you isolation. Mrs. Davis looked uncomfortable. "Frank, I don't understand what's happening." "They want me to co-sign a mortgage I can't afford to help them pay." Her confusion was genuine. "But Kevin drives that nice Audi. Didn't they just get back from Cancun?" That afternoon, I went to Johnson's Hardware for light bulbs. Bill Johnson, who'd been cutting me deals for 15 years, barely looked up when I walked in. The usual friendly chat was replaced by cold efficiency. At the grocery store, Linda the cashier, who always asked about Kevin and his beautiful wife, rang up my items without a single word. When I tried to make conversation, she gave me a look that could freeze water. The whispers followed me everywhere. Coffee shop conversations that stopped when I approached. Former friends who suddenly found their shoes fascinating when we passed on the sidewalk. The whole town was hearing one side of the story, and that side painted me as a miserly old man, hoarding wealth while his desperate children suffered. My phone buzzed constantly with screenshots from well-meaning relatives. Kevin had shared a photo of himself, looking haggard and defeated, with the caption, "When your own father chooses money over family." Jessica posted pictures of modest apartments with comments about having to settle for less because some people value dollars over their own blood. But they made a critical error. Their story was too perfect, too coordinated. I started documenting everything. Screenshots, saved posts, recorded voicemails from confused family members. Each piece of evidence showed the same pattern: emotional manipulation designed to pressure me into submission. When Kevin's high school friend, Chris, called to lecture me about family loyalty, I asked him a simple question. "Chris, do you think it's reasonable for a parent to risk their entire retirement to co-sign a mortgage their child can't afford?" Long pause. "Well, when you put it like that." "That's exactly what Kevin asked me to do. $500,000 for a house he can't make payments on. But Kevin said you had plenty of money." "I have enough for my retirement, not enough to bail out someone else's poor decisions." By evening, my documentation folder had grown substantially. Every social media post, every guilt-tripping message, every manipulative photo showed a clear pattern of calculated emotional warfare. I was sitting at my computer, organizing the evidence, when the certified letter arrived. The return address made my blood run cold. Brennan, Walsh and Associates, attorneys at law. I signed for the envelope with steady hands, but my heart was hammering as I walked back to my kitchen table. The letter lay unopened in front of me while I researched the law firm on my computer. Brennan, Walsh and Associates specialized in elder financial rights and family financial disputes. Their website featured testimonials from adult children who'd successfully sued elderly parents for promised financial support. My stomach dropped. Kevin and Jessica hadn't chosen this firm randomly. They'd found lawyers who specialized in exactly what they were planning to do to me. I opened the letter with deliberate care. The formal language couldn't disguise the threat. Demand for meeting regarding financial obligations and family support commitments. They wanted me to come to their office to resolve this matter amicably before formal proceedings become necessary. I set the letter aside and opened my laptop. Time to understand exactly what I was dealing with. First stop, Kevin's social media profiles. Amazing what people revealed when they thought only friends were watching. I scrolled through months of posts, taking screenshots of everything. Kevin's gaming setup upgrade in February, easily 4,000. Jessica's spa weekend in March, first-class flights, and 5-star resort photos. Their Valentine's Day dinner at the most expensive restaurant in Denver, complete with champagne and photos of 100 steaks. But 3 weeks ago, Kevin had posted about struggling to make ends meet and hoping family will help us get ahead. Next, I called their apartment complex. "Hi, this is Frank Miller. My son Kevin is a tenant in Unit 247. I'm thinking of helping him with his rent, but I want to understand his payment history." The manager, probably thinking I was a generous father, was helpful. "Mr. Miller has been late on rent 4 times this year, currently 2 months behind, but we're working with him." 2 months behind on rent, but they'd taken a weekend trip to Las Vegas just last month. Their spending priorities were crystal clear. I dug deeper into public records. Kevin's car lease payments were $847 monthly for an Audi he didn't need. Jessica's credit card statements, visible through their shared financial planning app, they'd foolishly made public, showed monthly charges at high-end boutiques, expensive restaurants, premium gym memberships. Their combined income was $85,000 annually. Their visible spending exceeded $95,000. They were living on credit, hoping I'd bail them out when it all collapsed. But the most revealing discovery came from Kevin's college friend Mike, who called me directly. "Mr. Miller, Mike Peterson. I knew Kevin in school. Listen, I feel weird about this, but Kevin hit me up for money last month, said his dad was being unreasonable about helping with bills. How much did he ask for? 3,000. Same story. Temporary setback would pay me back soon. But Mr. Miller, this is the third time in 2 years. I wrote down every detail. Kevin and Jessica weren't just targeting me. They were working everyone they knew, spreading the same lies, playing the same victim card. By evening, I had a comprehensive picture of their financial manipulation. They'd borrowed money from at least 6 people in the past year, always with sob stories about temporary hardship, never paying anyone back. They'd maxed out credit cards, maintaining a lifestyle they couldn't afford, then expected others to fund their irresponsibility. I called Helen Carter and update her on the situation. Frank, this is worse than family pressure. They're preparing to sue you. For what? I never promised them anything. They'll claim you made oral agreements to help with major purchases. In Colorado, that could theoretically be enforceable if they can prove it. But I didn't promise anything. I believe you, but they'll try to find witnesses, create a narrative of implied promises, maybe even claim you're suffering from age-related confusion. The strategy became clear. Attack my credibility, claim I'd made promises I couldn't remember, paint me as a confused elderly man who'd gone back on his word. The elder financial abuse specialist would know exactly how to frame their case. What do? Document everything, record every conversation legally, get witnesses to your actual statements. And Frank, start thinking about this as war. They're not interested in family reconciliation anymore. I hung up and stared at my growing evidence file. Dozens of screenshots, recorded conversations, financial records, witness statements from people they'd tried to manipulate. They wanted to play legal hardball with a man who'd spent 40 years solving problems methodically. They had no idea what they'd started. My phone rang. Kevin's name flashed on the screen. I hit record and answered. Hello, son. Dad, we need to talk. Can you come to the law office tomorrow at 2? We can work this out. What exactly are we working out? The money you owe us. The promises you made about helping family. What promises, Kevin? Don't play games, Dad. You know what you said. No, I don't. Tell me exactly what I promised and when. Silence. Then Jessica's voice in the background. He's trying to trick you. Don't answer that. Kevin's voice returned, shakier now. Just come to the meeting, Dad. 2 o'clock tomorrow. I'll be there. After I hung up, I saved the recording and added it to my evidence folder. Kevin couldn't specify a single promise because no promises had ever been made. The next morning brought another certified letter. This one wasn't a request for a meeting. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. I sat at my kitchen table, the same spot where Kevin had first made his demands 3 weeks ago, and carefully opened the certified mail. Complaint for damages. Kevin Miller and Jessica Miller versus Frank Miller. Amount demanded. $500,000 plus costs and attorney fees. My hand stayed steady as I read each accusation, but my anger grew with every word. They were claiming I'd made repeated oral promises to help with their major purchases, that I'd created reasonable expectations of financial support through my words and actions, that my sudden refusal constituted breach of contract and had caused them severe emotional and financial distress. The most outrageous claim came near the end. They were alleging I was suffering from age-related cognitive decline that made me forget promises made to family members and required court intervention to protect all parties involved. I set the papers down and called Helen Carter immediately. They filed suit, $500,000. I was afraid of that. Frank, can you come in this morning? We need to discuss strategy. An hour later, I sat in Helen's office with the lawsuit spread across her conference table. "This is aggressive," she said, scanning the documents. "They're using every tactic available. Breach of oral contract, promissory estoppel, even hinting at elder abuse." "Elder abuse? They're the ones trying to steal my retirement." That's the irony. But Frank, they've chosen their strategy carefully. They'll claim you made promises when witnesses were present that you encouraged their house hunting, that your sudden refusal proves cognitive issues. What witnesses? I never promised them anything. Helen pulled out a yellow pad. "Let's go through this systematically. Did you ever say anything that could be interpreted as a commitment to help financially?" I thought carefully. I said family should help each other, but I meant emotional support, advice, being there for each other. Were other people present? Sometimes. At Kevin's birthday dinner last year, I made a toast about family sticking together. At Christmas, I said I wanted them to be happy and successful. They'll twist those statements, make them sound like financial commitments. The scope of their planning became clear. They've been building this case for months, maybe years. Every family gathering, every casual conversation, every expression of love for my son had been catalogued as potential evidence of financial promises. Helen, they borrowed money from half a dozen people with sob stories about needing help. They're 2 months behind on rent, but just took a vacation to Vegas. Their social media shows luxury spending while they claim poverty. Her eyes lit up. That's our defense. We prove they have a pattern of financial manipulation and false claims. Your documentation becomes crucial evidence of their dishonesty. We spent 2 hours planning our response. Counterclaims for defamation, harassment, and abuse of process. Discovery requests for their complete financial records, social media accounts, and correspondence with other people they borrowed money from. Frank, this will get expensive and ugly. They're betting you'll settle rather than fight. I thought about the boy, Kevin used to be, helping me in the workshop, proud of honest work. Then I thought about the entitled stranger who demanded my life savings and was now trying to steal it through the courts. I'm not settling. I want everyone to know exactly what kind of people they are. Then we fight completely. Full discovery, character witnesses, financial analysis. We expose their pattern of manipulation and prove no promises were ever made. I signed the papers to formally respond and file counterclaims. The legal fees would be substantial, but my integrity was worth more than money. Helen, I want to make sure the truth comes out publicly. I want their friends, family, everyone to see the evidence of what they've done. We'll file everything in public court records, their financial irresponsibility, their lies, their attempts to manipulate you. It will all be documented. As I handed the signed papers back to her, I felt something I hadn't experienced since this nightmare began. Complete clarity about the fight ahead. They thought they could terrorize an old man into submission. They had no idea they just declared war on someone who'd spent a lifetime solving problems methodically, completely, and permanently. The gloves were coming off. Leaving Helen's office, I drove to the corner cafe where I'd been having coffee for 20 years. Time to face the community with my head. I had my head held high, and the truth in my hands. Sarah, the waitress who'd been cold to me recently, seemed uncertain when I walked in. She clearly heard Kevin and Jessica's version, but was too polite to be outright rude to a long-time customer. "Coffee, Frank." "Please, Sarah. And could I show you something?" I pulled out copies of Kevin's social media posts, the Vegas vacation photos, the expensive gaming setup, the luxury dinners, alongside his claims of poverty and need. Sarah's expression shifted as she looked at the timeline. Wait, he posted about struggling to pay rent the same week he was in Vegas? That's right. And here's his apartment manager's statement about being 2 months behind on payments. Her face hardened. Frank, I owe you an apology. When Jessica came in crying about how you wouldn't help family, I felt terrible for her. But this, she gestured at the evidence, this is different. Word spread quickly in a small community. By afternoon, I'd shown the documented evidence to Bill Johnson at the hardware store, Father McKenna at St. Mary's, and Helen, the librarian. Each conversation was calm, factual, and devastating to Kevin and Jessica's narrative. I don't gossip, I told each person, but I thought you should see the actual facts. The beauty of truth is its consistency. Kevin and Jessica's story had emotional appeal, but fell apart under scrutiny. My evidence told a clear, documented story that aligned with what people were beginning to notice themselves. Mrs. Davis stopped me at the mailbox that evening. Frank, I've been thinking about what we discussed. Kevin drives a nicer car than my husband, and we're both still working. How exactly are they struggling? That's a good question, Dorothy. Maybe you should ask Jessica next time she posts about their poverty on Facebook. The social media backfire was spectacular. Jessica's emotional posts about family betrayal had initially gained sympathy, but people started fact-checking. Comments began appearing under her poverty claims. Weren't you just in Miami last month? That's a nice Audi Kevin drives for someone who can't afford a house. Frank Miller has been nothing but generous to this community. Something doesn't add up here. Jessica tried doubling down with increasingly dramatic posts about elderly selfishness and broken promises, but her over-the-top victim narrative began working against her. People recognized manipulation when they saw it clearly. The grocery store provided the most satisfying validation. Linda, the cashier, who'd been giving me the cold shoulder, pulled me aside during checkout. Mr. Miller, I feel terrible about how I treated you, but after seeing those Facebook posts side by side with Kevin's vacation photos, well, I have eyes. No harm done, Linda. People were given incomplete information. My daughter pointed out that Kevin's gaming computer costs more than I make in 2 months, and he's claiming he can't afford groceries. The isolation Kevin and Jessica had tried to impose on me was reversing rapidly. Former supporters started distancing themselves, asking uncomfortable questions about the discrepancies between their claims and their lifestyle. I ran into Kevin's former boss at the gas station. Frank, Kevin came by asking for money last week, said his father was being unreasonable about a small loan. But the lawsuit papers are public record now. $500,000 isn't exactly small. No, it isn't. Makes a man wonder what else wasn't exactly truthful in that conversation. The beauty of my approach was its restraint. I never attacked Kevin and Jessica personally, never called them liars or thieves. I simply presented documented facts and let people draw their own conclusions. The evidence spoke louder than any emotional appeal. By the end of the week, the shift in community opinion was dramatic. People who'd initially sympathized with the struggling young couple were now questioning everything they'd been told. Kevin and Jessica's support network wasn't just eroding, it was actively turning against them. My phone rang at 8 p.m. Kevin's name on the screen, but his voice was shaky when I answered. Dad, can we meet somewhere private? Just the two of us? The confidence was gone. The entitled demands had been replaced by something that sounded almost like fear. What did you have in mind? Maybe Oak Creek Park tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. I think we need to work something out. I smiled, knowing he couldn't see it. The lawsuit had been filed. The community had seen the evidence, and their house of lies was collapsing around them. I'll be there, Kevin. The boy who thought he could intimidate his father with lawyers and social pressure was about to learn that truth has a way of winning in the end. Kevin's voice barely sounded like my son anymore. The confident entitlement had cracked, replaced by something that sounded dangerously close to panic. Oak Creek Park, Dad. 10 a.m. Please. I sat in my study, noting how he dropped the demands and threats. I'll be there, Kevin. But when I arrived at the small park the next morning, Kevin was already there. He sat hunched on a bench, looking older than his 35 years. Dad? He stood up quickly, nervously. Thanks for coming. The expensive clothes were still there, but they couldn't hide the stress lines around his eyes, or the way his hands shook slightly when he gestured. This wasn't the arrogant young man who demanded my retirement savings 3 weeks ago. You look tired, Kevin. Yeah, well, he laughed, but there was no humor in it. Things have been complicated lately. We sat on opposite ends of the bench where I'd once pushed him on swings. The irony wasn't lost on me. Dad, I think this is a good idea. I think this whole thing has gotten out of hand. I waited. Let him talk. The lawsuit, the lawyers, all this drama. Maybe we can work something out. You know, just between us. What kind of workout? Kevin's Adam's apple bobbed. If we drop the lawsuit, maybe you could help us with something smaller. Not the whole house, but maybe a down payment. 20, 30,000. The negotiation tactics were pathetic. Start high, get rejected, come back with a smaller demand, and hope it seems reasonable by comparison. Kevin, where's Jessica? His face tightened. She didn't want me to meet with you. Said it showed weakness. What do you think? I think I'm drowning, Dad. The words came out strangled. Our credit cards are maxed. The car payments 3 months behind. The legal fees alone are killing us. I pulled out my phone and hit record. Tell me about your financial situation, son. Why are you? He stopped seeing the phone. Are you recording me? Yes, for my protection. Kevin stared at the device, then seemed to deflate completely. We owe $55,000 on credit cards. The Audi lease is $1,200 a month. I lied about the payment. Jessica's spending it's out of control, but I can't seem to stop her. The admissions poured out like water from a broken pipe. The Vegas trip had cost $8,000 they didn't have. Jessica's shopping addiction had emptied their savings twice in the past year. They borrowed money from 6 different people with lies about temporary hardships. We never thought you'd fight the lawsuit, Kevin said, his voice hollow. Our lawyer said most elderly people settle rather than go through the stress of court. Your lawyer was wrong. Dad, the discovery process. They want our complete financial records, social media accounts, everything. When people see what we actually spend versus what we claimed. He buried his face in his hands. We're going to be completely exposed. The boy who'd once helped me fix faulty wiring was admitting to systematic fraud and manipulation. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger anymore, but a kind of clinical detachment. Kevin, did you really think I'd made promises to pay for your house? Long pause. Jessica said you did. She said when you talked about family help and family, you were making commitments. And what do you think now? I think, he looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. I think I've been an idiot. I think I let my wife convince me to destroy my relationship with my father for money we never deserved. The admission should have moved me. A month ago, it might have. Now it just sounded like another manipulation attempt. What do you want from me, Kevin? I want to take it all back. The lawsuit, the things we said about you, the whole mess. Can we just forget this ever happened? I stood up from the bench, looking down at my son. No, Kevin, we can't. But Dad, the lawsuit changed everything. You accused me in court documents of cognitive decline, breach of contract, elder abuse. You tried to steal my retirement savings through legal fraud. His face crumpled. I was desperate. So was I, Kevin. Desperate to understand how I raised a son who could do this to his own father. I walked away, leaving him on the bench where I'd once taught him to be honest, to work hard, to treat people with respect. All lessons he'd apparently forgotten. Driving home, I felt empty rather than victorious. The scared young man in the park bore little resemblance to the confident boy I'd raised, but it wasn't my job to rescue him from consequences he'd earned. Pulling into my driveway, I noticed a familiar car parked across the street. Jessica sat behind the wheel, watching my house with the intensity of a predator. Our eyes met through her windshield, and the hatred in her stare was pure and undiluted. I went inside and called Helen Carter to report the surveillance. 2 days after Jessica's surveillance, I received the court notice. The hearing was set for Thursday morning, Judge Patricia Henley presiding. I spent Monday organizing my evidence files one final time. Every screenshot, every recorded conversation, every piece of financial documentation was labeled, indexed, and ready for presentation. Helen had been amazed by the thoroughness of my preparation. Frank, in 30 years of practice, I've never seen a plaintiff with better documentation. They walked into a trap of their own making. Thursday morning arrived grey and cold, matching the seriousness of what lay ahead. I dressed in my best suit, the one I'd worn to Kevin's college graduation, and arrived at the courthouse 30 minutes early. Kevin and Jessica were already there, huddled with their attorney near the metal detectors. Jessica wore an expensive black dress that probably cost more than some people made in a week. Kevin's suit looked new and tailored. They were still playing the part of successful young professionals, even as their financial world collapsed around them. Their lawyer, James Brennan, was a slick-looking man in his 40s with perfectly styled hair and an expensive briefcase. He'd built his reputation on these family financial disputes, convincing elderly parents to settle rather than face public embarrassment. He was about to learn that not all elderly parents were easily intimidated. Mr. Miller, Judge Henley called the courtroom to order with crisp efficiency. She was a stern woman in her 50s, known for having little patience with frivolous lawsuits. Brennan stood to present Kevin and Jessica's case. His voice was smooth, practiced, designed to evoke sympathy for his young clients who'd been betrayed by broken family promises. Your Honor, my clients have documented evidence of repeated verbal commitments from the defendant to assist with major family purchases. Mr. Kevin Miller will testify that his father explicitly promised to help with their first home purchase, creating reasonable expectations of support. Kevin took the stand, his voice shaky as he recounted conversations that had never happened. According to his testimony, I'd made specific promises at family dinners, birthday celebrations, and holiday gatherings to make sure they got their dream house. It was complete fiction, and I watched the judge's expression grow skeptical as Kevin stumbled through his rehearsed lies. Jessica's testimony was worse. She sobbed dramatically about their broken dreams and elderly betrayal, claiming I'd encouraged them to look at expensive houses because I committed to helping with the purchase. Mr. Miller told us repeatedly that family takes care of family, she said through fake tears. He said our happiness was his priority and that he had more money than he could ever spend. Judge Henley's expression remained neutral, but I caught her making notes during the most emotional portions of Jessica's performance. Then it was Helen's turn. Your Honor, the defendants have prepared a comprehensive response to these allegations, supported by extensive documentation. I took the stand and calmly recounted the actual events. No dramatic emotions, no theatrical gestures, just facts, dates, and recorded conversations. Helen presented our evidence systematically. Kevin's social media posts showing luxury spending while claiming poverty, credit card statements revealing their true financial situation, recorded phone calls where they admitted their manipulative strategies. The courtroom was dead silent as my recording of Kevin played. "We never thought you'd fight the lawsuit. Our lawyer said most elderly people settle rather than go through the stress of court." Brendan objected repeatedly, but the recordings were legal and the evidence was devastating. The financial timeline was particularly damning. While claiming they couldn't afford groceries, Kevin and Jessica had spent $43,000 on luxury purchases in the past year. Judge Henley reviewed the evidence with growing incredulity. When Helen finished the presentation, the judge leaned forward and asked the question that ended everything. "Mr. Brennan, where's the written documentation of this alleged promise? Any contract, any written agreement, any documented proof that your client was guaranteed $500,000? Brendan stammered. "Your Honor, many family agreements are verbal." "I'm not asking about family agreements. I'm asking about written proof of a specific promise to provide $500,000 for a house purchase." Silence. "There is none, Your Honor." Judge Henley's expression hardened. "So you're asking this court to order an elderly man to pay $500,000 based entirely on the testimony of two people who, according to the evidence presented, have systematically lied about their financial situation, manipulated family members, and attempted to defraud their own father." The courtroom was electric with tension. Kevin and Jessica looked like deer caught in headlights. "Your Honor, I request a brief recess to consult with my clients." "Granted, 15 minutes. As the judge left the bench, Helen leaned over to whisper in my ear, "We've won, Frank, completely." But I wasn't watching my lawyer's celebration. I was watching Kevin's complete breakdown as reality finally hit him. Judge Henley returned to the bench with an expression that could have frozen fire. Kevin and Jessica sat rigid in their seats, their expensive clothes now seeming like costumes in a play that had gone horribly wrong. "I've reviewed all evidence presented in this case," Judge Henley began, her voice carrying the weight of final judgment. "This court finds the plaintiff's claims to be not only without merit, but actively fraudulent." Kevin's face went white. Jessica gripped the table so hard her knuckles showed through her skin. "The evidence presented by the defendant demonstrates a clear pattern of financial manipulation, deliberate misrepresentation, and attempted fraud. The plaintiffs have provided no credible evidence of any promise, written or verbal, to provide $500,000 for a home purchase." The judge's voice grew sharper. "Furthermore, the evidence shows that the plaintiffs maintained expensive lifestyles while claiming poverty, borrowed money from multiple sources under false pretenses, and systematically attempted to manipulate elderly family members for financial gain." I sat perfectly still, feeling a deep satisfaction as justice unfolded exactly as it should. The plaintiff's lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice. The defendant's counterclaims for defamation, harassment, and abuse of process are granted in full. Brennan tried to speak. "Your Honor, if we could—" "I'm not finished, Counselor." Judge Henley's tone could have cut steel. "The court awards the defendant full reimbursement of legal fees in the amount of $2,800 plus court costs and punitive damages of $15,000 for the emotional distress caused by this frivolous action." Kevin made a choking sound. $43,000 they didn't have on top of their existing legal fees. Additionally, the judge continued, "This court is referring this case to the state attorney's office for investigation of potential perjury charges. Lying under oath is a felony, and this court does not tolerate fraud." Jessica burst into tears. Real ones this time, not the manufactured emotion she displayed earlier. Kevin sat motionless, staring straight ahead like a man watching his life collapse in real time. Finally, the court issues a restraining order prohibiting the plaintiffs from contacting the defendant directly or through third parties from approaching his residence and from making any further public statements about this matter. Judge Henley looked directly at Kevin and Jessica. You attempted to use this court system to steal from your own family member. You have disgraced yourselves, wasted taxpayer resources, and committed perjury in my courtroom. I hope the consequences serve as a lesson about the difference between legal action and legalized theft. The gavel came down with finality. In the hallway outside the courtroom, reporters had gathered. Word of the dramatic case had spread through the community. Kevin and Jessica hurried past them with their heads down, but several people I recognized from town were waiting to talk to me. Mr. Miller, how do you feel about the verdict? Asked Jenny from the local newspaper. I thought carefully before answering. I feel that justice was served today. Family relationships should be built on love and respect, not financial manipulation. I hope this sends a message that elderly people won't be intimidated by threats or lawsuits from people who want something for nothing. Mrs. Peterson from down the street approached me with tears in her eyes. Frank, I'm so sorry I believed their lies. I should have known better. No harm done, Helen. People were given incomplete information. Kevin appeared suddenly beside me, his face desperate. Dad, please, can we talk? I know I made mistakes. I looked at my son, this stranger wearing Kevin's face, and felt nothing but tired sadness. You heard the judge, Kevin. There's a restraining order. Don't violate it. I walked past him without another word, Helen at my side, and stepped into the bright sunshine outside the courthouse. Behind me, I could hear Jessica's voice rising in fury. This isn't over. We'll appeal. Brennan's sharp response cut her off. You'll do nothing. You're lucky you're not being arrested right now. I drove home slowly, taking the long route past the house Kevin and Jessica could no longer afford. A bright red "For Sale" sign had appeared in the front yard, probably posted that morning after the hearing. I didn't slow down, but I allowed myself a small smile. Justice served. My driveway had never felt more welcoming. I sat in my car for several minutes, watching my house, my sanctuary that Kevin and Jessica had tried to take from me through legal theft. The afternoon sun made the windows glow golden, and everything felt peaceful in a way it hadn't for months. My phone buzzed constantly with congratulatory messages. The courthouse victory had spread through Boulder, faster than news of a lottery winner. Sarah from the diner. Frank, so proud of how you handled this. Takes real courage to stand up for what's right. Bill Johnson. Coffee's on the house for life. You showed this town what integrity looks like. Father McKenna. Justice served with dignity. Your parents would be proud. By evening, I'd received over 40 messages from friends, neighbors, and even strangers who'd heard about the case. The community that Kevin and Jessica had briefly turned against me was now firmly in my corner, and they were angry at being manipulated. Mrs. Davis stopped by with a casserole. Frank, I felt so foolish for believing their story, but watching you handle this with such class, you're an inspiration. The long-term consequences for Kevin and Jessica became clear over the following weeks. Their house went into foreclosure within days of the court judgment. The Audi was repossessed. Their social media accounts disappeared entirely, probably to avoid the comments from people who now knew the truth. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned they'd moved in with Jessica's parents in Nebraska, completely humiliated and financially destroyed. Kevin had lost his job. His employer didn't appreciate the negative publicity from the perjury investigation. The legal fees, court-ordered damages, and complete destruction of their credit meant they'd be recovering from this disaster for years. They'd gambled everything on intimidating an old man and lost spectacularly. Did I feel guilty about Kevin's consequences? Not for a moment. Every misfortune that befell them was the direct result of choices they'd made. I hadn't destroyed their finances. I'd simply refused to bail them out of their own irresponsibility. The broader lessons of the experience settled into my consciousness like sediment after a storm. Truth really does triumph over manipulation, but only if you're willing to fight for it. Dignity and principle are worth defending, even when the cost seems high. Family loyalty must be earned through respect and reciprocated. It can't be demanded through guilt or threats. Most importantly, I'd learned that saying no to family members who want to exploit you isn't cruelty. It's necessary boundary setting that protects everyone involved. My life moved forward with a lightness I hadn't felt in years. The stress of wondering when Kevin would make his next financial demand was gone permanently. The community respect I'd earned through this ordeal was deeper than anything I'd experienced before. New friendships formed with people who'd watched me handle the situation with integrity. My church asked me to speak to their senior group about protecting themselves from financial manipulation. The local newspaper wrote an editorial about my case, calling it a 3 months after the court victory. I was working in my garden when Helen Carter called with news. Frank, Kevin, and Jessica's lawyer has been sanctioned by the state bar for knowingly filing a frivolous lawsuit, and the district attorney has decided to prosecute them for perjury. I continued planting tomato seedlings as she spoke. The earth was rich and dark, perfect for growing healthy things while removing harmful weeds. What's the likely outcome? Nay, probation, community service, and permanent criminal records. Nothing that will send them to jail, but enough to ensure everyone knows what they attempted to do. After hanging up, I sat back on my heels, surveying the neat rows of plants that would feed me through the summer and into fall. The garden was a perfect metaphor for life. Nurture what's healthy, remove what's harmful, and trust that good things will grow from patient effort. Kevin had been like a weed in my garden, choking out peace and draining resources meant for healthy growth. Removing him had been painful but necessary. My phone rang, another friend calling to check on me, invite me to dinner, or just share a conversation. The community that had briefly shunned me now embraced me more warmly than ever. I was finally free to be the man I'd always been. Honest, hard-working, generous with people who deserved it, and absolutely unwilling to reward greed or manipulation. The sun was setting over my garden, painting everything in golden light. Tomorrow I'd plant the second row of vegetables, tend the flowers, and continue building the peaceful life I'd earned through a lifetime of honest work. Justice served, family protected, truth victorious. Sometimes the hardest battles are fought with the people closest to you, but sometimes those battles are exactly what's needed to protect everything that matters. I was at peace. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.